No one notices the exact second when something innocent turns complicated. It does not arrive with noise or warning, slips into the heart quietly, like rain through a small crack in the roof. For Ariba, it began on an evening filled with thunder. Before that night, her world had already changed. Her father's sudden death had left the house hollow. The walls still stood, the furniture remained in place, but warmth had drained away. Her mother moved slowly now, speaking less, staring often at nothing. Her older sister, Sana, tried to stay strong, balancing her job and her marriage. And Ariba, freshly graduated from university, returned home carrying her suitcase and her confusion. She had plans, once dreams of working in another city, building something for herself. But grief rearranged everything. She felt suspended between childhood and adulthood, unsure where she belonged. Hamza had always been part of family gatherings. As Sana's husband, he was polite and steady, never spoke loudly. He fixed broken chairs, brought sweets for everyone, and respected elders without being asked. Ariba had never looked at him twice. He was simply Sana's husband, safe, distant, not someone her heart could even consider. After the funeral, he started coming by more often. He would sit with Ariba's mother, discussing bills and paperwork her father once handled. He drove them to government offices. He helped arrange documents. He never acted like a hero. He simply did what needed to be done. One afternoon, Ariba sat alone in the living room, staring at her phone without reading anything. The future felt like a blank page she was afraid to write on. Hamza entered quietly, carrying tea. He placed a cup near her and sat across from her. "You've been very quiet," he said. She shrugged. "There's nothing to say." "There's always something to say," he replied gently. Most people told her to be strong, to be patient, to pray more. Hamza did not offer advice. He asked questions. What job did she want? What scared her most? Did she still think about moving to Lahore, like she once mentioned? She was surprised he remembered that small detail. No one else had. That day she talked more than she expected. Words spilled out quickly. Her fear of failing, her guilt for wanting independence when her mother needed her, her anger at her father for leaving so suddenly. She had never spoken those thoughts aloud. Hamza listened without interrupting. His eyes stayed steady. He did not judge. Something shifted in her chest, but she ignored it. Days passed, he continued visiting. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he came just to check on the leaking sink or the unstable gate. Erba began noticing small things about him. The way he rolled up his sleeves when working, the quiet focus in his face, the softness in his voice when speaking to her mother. She told herself she was only grateful. Then came the storm. The sky turned dark before evening. Heavy clouds covered everything. Wind pushed against windows, making the glass tremble. Had stayed late at work. The house felt tense as thunder cracked overhead. When the electricity suddenly went out, the house fell into complete darkness. Ariba's mother went to her room with a candle. Ariba stepped onto the balcony, letting cool rain spray against her face. The storm felt honest, loud, unafraid to show its power. She heard the balcony door slide open behind her. "It's dangerous to stand too close," Hamza said calmly. She had not realized he was still there. He must have stayed back after checking the circuit breaker. She turned slightly. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for a brief second. His expression was not distant tonight. It was concerned, focused entirely on her. "You're not afraid?" he asked. "Of the storm?" she replied. Of everything he said, the question hit deeper than expected. She laughed softly, but her voice shook. "I'm afraid all the time." Thunder rolled again, louder. Without thinking, she moved a step closer to him. It felt natural, like seeking shelter from strong wind. He did not move away. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore," she admitted. "I feel like everyone expects me to be okay." "You don't have to be okay right now," he said quietly. "Grief doesn't follow a schedule." Lightning flashed again, bright and sharp. For a second, the world looked frozen in white light. In that flash, she saw him differently. Not as Sana's husband, not as a helper in the family. Oh, she saw. Man standing close to her in the dark, offering comfort without asking for anything in return. Her heart reacted before her mind could stop it. She stepped back quickly. "I should check on Oma," said. He nodded, giving her space immediately. Of course. But as she walked inside, her pulse would not slow down. That night, she lay awake listening to rain hit the roof. She replayed every second on the balcony. The closeness, the concern in his voice, the way he said her fear was allowed. No one had given her permission to feel weak before. She turned to face the wall, ashamed of her thoughts. "This is wrong," she told herself. "He is your sister's husband. He belongs to her world, not yours." Morning arrived, but the feeling remained. Over. The next week, Ariba tried to act normal. She avoided long conversations. When Hamza visited, she stayed busy in the kitchen. She reminded herself of boundaries. She reminded herself of Sana's kindness. Sana had always protected her when they were children. She had shared clothes, secrets, dreams. Ariba loved her deeply. Yet something restless had awakened. One afternoon, Sana invited Ariba to join them for dinner outside. A simple family outing. Ariba almost refused, but her mother insisted she go dot at the restaurant. Lights glowed warmly. The smell of spices filled the air. Sana spoke excitedly about a new project at work. Hamza listened proudly. Ariba watched. Them from across the table, they looked happy, balanced, comfortable. Why then did she feel a strange ache? At one point, Sana left the table to answer a phone call. Silence fell between Ariba and Hamza. It was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy. "You should apply for that internship," he said suddenly. She looked up. "You remember that too?" "Of course," he replied. "Shouldn't shrink your dreams because life became difficult." His words warmed her and hurt her at the same time. "I don't want to leave Oma alone," she said. "She won't always need you this way," he answered, "and she would want you to grow." The sincerity in his voice felt personal. Too personal. Sana returned, smiling, unaware of the undercurrent flowing beneath the surface. That night, Ariba stood in front of her mirror longer than usual. She examined her reflection carefully. She had lost weight after her father's death. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. But something else had changed too. There was a spark there now, confusing and unwanted. Days later, she found herself waiting for the sound of his car outside. She hated that realization. When he laughed at something her mother said, her heart reacted. When he asked her opinion about a news article, she felt seen. She began noticing how he chose words carefully, how he never raised his voice, how his patience felt solid and rare. She tried to convince herself that admiration was harmless, but admiration can quietly turn into longing. One evening, while helping her mother cook, she overheard Sana speaking to a friend on the phone. "Hamza has been so supportive," Sana said. "I don't know what I would have done without him these past months." Guilt hit Ariba sharply. "What are you doing?" she asked herself. She began creating distance intentionally. When Hamza visited, she excused herself. She avoided eye contact. She kept conversations short. He noticed, "Did I say something wrong?" He asked her one day while handing her a book she had left on the table. "No," she replied quickly. "I'm just tired." He studied her face for a moment, as if trying to understand something deeper. But he did not push. The restraint only made everything more intense. Late at night, she admitted a truth she could not ignore anymore. The moment on the balcony had changed something inside her. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. But it had opened a door she never meant to unlock. She was not in love, not yet, but she was, no longer indifferent. And that terrified her because she knew if she did not control her heart now, it could lead her somewhere she would never forgive. Herself for going outside. The sky cleared slowly after days of rain. Inside, a different storm had just begun. Ariba tried to push her feelings away, but emotions do not bend easily to willpower. She kept herself busy, cleaning the house, reading old novels, and helping her mother with daily chores. She reminded herself constantly that Hamza was her sister's husband, a part of the family, someone untouchable. Yet every small interaction, every shared glance, kept stirring the restless ache inside her chest. Her sister Sana remained oblivious to the quiet tension. She went about her days with her usual cheerful energy, chatting with Hamza about work, family, and little daily matters. Their laughter was like music to the house, comforting and familiar, but to Ariba, it felt like a reminder of the invisible line she could never cross. She watched them, feeling both admiration and guilt, knowing that any stray thought she entertained about Hamza could shatter the happiness surrounding him. One afternoon, a minor incident became the turning point. The kitchen sink had begun leaking, a slow drip that disturbed the quiet hum of the house. Hamza came over to fix it just as he always did, tools in hand, sleeves rolled up, focused on the task. Ariba was trying to dry the dishes when her foot slipped on the wet tile. Instinctively, Hamza reached out and caught her arm. Their eyes met, and for the briefest instant, everything in the kitchen seemed suspended. Neither spoke, yet the air was heavy with an unspoken awareness. His touch lingered just a fraction longer than necessary, and she felt a warmth surge through her body. Ariba pulled her hand away, her heart racing. "I'm fine," she whispered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Hamza stepped back, clearing his throat. "We should be careful," he said quietly, his eyes betraying the conflict he was trying to hide. She realized in that moment that he felt it too, the invisible tension that had begun growing between them. She had assumed that only her heart was betraying her. That night, Ariba lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. She could still feel the warmth of his hand on her arm, the steady gaze that seemed to look right through her. She felt shame, guilt, and longing all at once. She loved her sister dearly, loved her family, and yet a small part of her heart had shifted. Pulled by the inexplicable gravity of attraction, days turned into weeks, and Ariba's attempts to avoid Hamza became more intentional. She stopped lingering in the living room when he visited. She kept conversations short and avoided being alone with him. Hamza, in turn, became careful. He stopped lingering near her, no longer engaging in casual private conversations. He maintained a polite distance, speaking only when necessary. Yet the silence between them was more torturous than any closeness could have been. Every glance, every accidental touch seemed to carry a weight far heavier than the simplicity of ordinary interactions. The emotions simmered quietly, like a low flame that refused to die. Ariba found herself thinking about him at the most unexpected moments, while walking in the garden, when preparing meals, and even during work on her studies. She chastised herself constantly, telling herself that these thoughts were wrong, that they could not exist. But denying them did not make them disappear. They persisted, growing with each passing day. One evening, while helping her mother set the table for dinner, Ariba overheard a conversation that made her heart twist. Anna was speaking on the phone to a friend, laughing lightly, her voice bright. "And carefree Hamza has been so helpful these days. I don't know what I would have done without him," she said. The pride in her sister's voice was unmistakable. Ariba felt a pang of guilt so sharp it took her breath away. The man she was silently drawn to belonged entirely to her sister's world, and any wandering thought she entertained was a betrayal. Ariba's attempts to distract herself failed. She tried reading, writing, and spending more time with her mother, but the pull remained. Hamza's presence was subtle, yet profound. His calm voice, careful words, and the way he listened with genuine interest kept resonating inside her. She found herself craving conversations that never happened, replaying past interactions in her mind, wondering if he remembered the same fleeting moments. One afternoon, Sana had to leave for work unexpectedly. Hamza came over to check on the house while she was away. Ariba avoided him at first, moving from room to room, pretending to be busy. But eventually, they ended up in the kitchen together, fixing a small cabinet hinge that had loosened. The closeness of the space, the shared focus on a mundane task, created an intensity neither of them had anticipated while reaching for a screwdriver. Ariba's hand brushed against his. The contact, accidental yet electric, made her heart skip a beat. She looked up to apologize, only to find Hamza already watching her. His eyes were calm, but they held a weight she could not decipher. No words were spoken, yet the air between them was thick with understanding. He knew what she was feeling, and she knew he felt the same. Ariba's breath caught. "This is wrong," she whispered to herself, stepping back slightly. Hamza, as if reading her thoughts, spoke quietly, "It doesn't have to happen. We can stop it here." His voice was steady but heavy with unspoken emotion. She realized he was struggling as much as she was. The recognition that their feelings mirrored each other made everything more painful. That night, Ariba cried quietly, tears soaking her pillow. She felt torn between loyalty to her family and the undeniable attraction she felt for Hamza. She loved her sister. She respected her family. She wanted nothing to disrupt the happiness that existed around her. Yet a part of her heart had already been swayed, captivated by the gentleness, patience, and understanding of a man she could not have. The next day, she found herself avoiding the living room, pretending to be engrossed in chores. Hamza, in turn, kept his distance, his polite smiles and careful words a constant reminder of the invisible line they could not cross. Every interaction was now charged with tension, a careful dance of restraint that left both of them restless. Ariba realized that the feelings she had for him were not fleeting. They were persistent, growing stronger with each small gesture, each brief conversation. She began questioning herself constantly. Was it admiration? Was it attraction? Or had her loneliness and grief made her heart more vulnerable than she realized? She did not have answers, only a rising tide of emotion she could not control. One evening, while sitting alone in the garden, she reflected on the moment in the kitchen, the hand that brushed hers, the eyes that had held hers a little too long. She remembered the storm, the balcony, and the first time she had seen him differently. The realization struck her like lightning. These feelings were not simple. They were complicated, dangerous, and yet impossible to ignore. The following week, she attempted to regain normalcy by focusing on herself. She walked in the park, practiced cooking new recipes, and even began drafting applications for internships in faraway cities. She told herself that distance would be the solution. If she removed herself from the house, from Hamza's presence, she could extinguish the confusing emotions that had taken root. But even distance could not quell them entirely. She found herself replaying moments in her mind, the way he smiled at her mother, the way he had steadied her hand, the way he spoke with gentle authority. Each memory was a small reminder of the pull she could not resist. She realized that ignoring feelings did not dissolve them. It only made them more insistent. Ariba's nights became restless. Sleep offered no escape. She lay awake, listening to the sounds of the house, hearing the distant hum of traffic outside, imagining conversations that never happened, moments that would never exist. She understood now that the moment on the balcony had not been an isolated event. It had been the beginning of a subtle, unspoken bond between her and Hamza. The tension between them reached a quiet peak one afternoon. Hamza needed help moving some furniture in the living room. Ariba, despite her best efforts, was drawn into the task. As they worked side by side, their hands brushed repeatedly. Each touch was electric, yet both remained silent, maintaining the delicate boundary they knew existed. She could feel the weight of restraint in the room. The unspoken awareness of mutual attraction. Ariba realized that the feelings were no longer under her control. She could no longer pretend indifference, no matter how hard she tried. Each glance, each moment of accidental contact reminded her of the line she could not cross. yet also made her long to cross it in ways she would never allow herself. One evening, she saw Hamza sitting alone in the study, reading a book. His concentration was intense, yet there was a softness in his posture, a vulnerability he seldom showed. Araba hesitated, standing in the doorway, unsure if she should leave or speak. She wanted to walk away to maintain the barrier, but her feet betrayed her, taking her a few steps closer. He looked up and smiled faintly, a polite, cautious smile. "You should rest," he said quietly, noticing her fatigue. His voice was calm/soothing, but the undertone carried a depth of emotion. He did not speak aloud. "I just wanted to check something," she replied, though her heart was racing. She realized how small their interactions had become loaded with meaning. Words were measured, silences were charged, and every glance held weight. That night she sat by the window, looking at the stars. She reflected on everything: the storm, the balcony, the kitchen, the quiet moments of connection, the way he had stepped back when awareness hit. Ariba's days grew heavier with the quiet tension that hung between her and Hamza. Each morning, she reminded herself that she could not let her heart dictate actions. Each evening, she lay awake, haunted by fleeting glances and accidental touches that had become impossible to ignore. She knew she was walking a dangerous line, but the weight of responsibility toward her sister, her mother, and her own conscience kept her restrained. Every choice felt like a battle, and every interaction a test of self-control she was not sure she could pass. It was a warm afternoon when Sana returned from her work trip. She arrived humming a tune, carrying shopping bags filled with gifts for the family. Ariba's chest tightened as she greeted her sister with a hug, feeling both love and guilt in equal measure. Hamza helped carry the bags into the house, his presence calm, steady, and painfully magnetic. Ariba caught herself staring at him for just a moment too long and immediately turned away, mentally scolding herself. She could not afford to lose herself now, not after all the restraint she had practiced. Sana noticed a shift. She had returned to a house filled with small silences and careful glances. She began asking innocent questions, seemingly casual but heavy in meaning. "Ariba, you seem quiet around Hamza. Is everything okay?" she asked one evening while folding laundry. Ariba froze, her hands shaking slightly as she hid the laundry deeper in the basket. "I'm fine," she said quickly, her voice lighter than she felt. But the moment lingered. She knew her sister's words were more than casual curiosity. Sana was perceptive, and she had begun to notice the subtle tension that Ariba had tried so hard to hide. That evening, Ariba could no longer ignore her heart. She needed answers, clarity, a resolution. She waited until the house was quiet. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock, the only sounds in the background. She called Hamza to meet her in the garden, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. The sky was a deep orange, the sun dipping low, painting the world in shades of uncertainty. Hamza arrived moments later, his face calm but his eyes carrying a quiet storm. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, closing the distance between them just enough to feel familiar, but not intimate. Ariba's chest tightened. The air between them was thick with all that had gone unspoken, with all the longing and restraint that had built up over weeks. We can't pretend this doesn't exist," she said, her voice shaking, her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. She was aware of the danger of the words, but they had to be said. They had to confront what was quietly taking root between them. Hamza exhaled slowly, as if carrying the weight of their shared tension. "I know," he said softly. His voice was steady, gentle, but there was an unmistakable gravity in his tone. "And that's why we have to end it before it begins." Ariba's eyes widened and a lump formed in her throat. "End what? We never even started anything," she whispered, the truth of her feelings hitting her all at once. The attraction, the longing, the moments of connection, they had been brief, fleeting, and yet they had felt monumental. She realized now that the danger was not in the action itself, but in the potential destruction that could follow if they allowed themselves to indulge it. Hamza stepped closer, but not too close, maintaining a careful distance. "That's exactly why we still have a choice," he said. "We can feel it, we can acknowledge it, but we do not have to act on it. There are consequences that neither of us should bear." His words were deliberate, calm, yet carried a weight that made Ariba's heart ache. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to cling to him, to the comfort, the understanding, the gentleness he offered. But she also knew the truth. This was not love in its purest form. It was longing, heightened by grief and loneliness, intensified by proximity. Acting on it would betray her sister, betray her family, betray herself. Ariba nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. She understood what Hamza meant. This attraction, this bond, had arisen under difficult circumstances, but it was not real love. Real love would protect those you cared for, even at the cost of your own desires. And if she truly cared for her sister, she had to choose restraint, even if it hurt. Over the next few days, Ariba began preparing for a change she knew she needed. She had applied for a position in another city weeks ago, and now she saw it as more than just a career move. Was a chance to put distance between herself and the growing feelings that had taken root. Packing her belongings felt heavy, but necessary. Every item she placed in her suitcase symbolized a piece of herself she was reclaiming. A step toward clarity and self-respect. The night before she left, she sat with Hamza briefly in the quiet of the living room. No words were necessary. They shared a look, acknowledging all that had passed between them, the fleeting moments of closeness, the unspoken emotions, the tension that had tested their resolve. There was sadness, yes, but also a sense of relief. The hardest part was admitting to themselves that their bond could not exist without causing pain. Sana hugged Ariba tightly the next morning, unaware of the quiet storm that had passed between the two of them. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, and Ariba felt a mixture of guilt and gratitude. She was leaving more than just a city behind. She was leaving the shadow of a temptation that could have shattered her family. She was stepping into a new chapter, carrying lessons learned in the quiet moments of restraint, self-awareness, and moral courage in the cab to the train station. Reba thought back to the balcony during the storm, to the kitchen incident, to the quiet garden conversation. She realized that these moments, though painful, had shaped her. They had taught her the difference between desire and responsibility, between fleeting attraction and the enduring value of love that honors others. Months later, in a city far from home, Ariba began to rebuild her life. She focused on her career, made new friends, and slowly allowed her heart to heal. The memories of Hamza remained, but they were no longer a source of temptation. They were lessons, gentle reminders of the complexity of human emotions, of the importance of boundaries, and of the strength required to do what is right, even when it is hard. Ariba found herself smiling more often, feeling lighter, freer. She met people, formed new connections, and learned to trust her instincts without allowing them to lead her astray. She understood now that love is not only about passion or attraction. It is also about wisdom, patience, and the courage to step back when circumstances demand it. Back home, life continued as it always had. Hamza remained devoted to Sana, their marriage stable and strong. Ariba knew she had played a small part in preserving that stability, choosing restraint over indulgence. She felt pride in that, even if it was tinged with sadness. The moment she had seen him differently had changed her forever, not in terms of romance, but in terms of self-awareness, maturity, and the understanding of the delicate balance of emotions. Sometimes, late at night, she would think of that summer, the storm, the kitchen, the quiet garden, the longing, the tension, the unspoken emotions. And she would smile, knowing she had navigated the storm with integrity. She had seen herself truly seen in the reflection of another person's understanding. And in that, she had found clarity, strength, the beginning of a new life, free from the dangerous pull of forbidden emotions. Ariba realized that life is full of moments that test the heart. Some moments are fleeting, some profound. Some teach you that restraint is stronger than desire, that love is measured not only by what you feel, but by the choices you make. The hardest lessons are often the most valuable. And the ones we carry quietly with us shape who we become. She understood now that the strongest kind of love is, sometimes, the one you walk away from, the attraction, the longing, the brief glimpses of connection. They had taught her about the fragility of human emotion, the importance of responsibility, and the depth of integrity. And she would carry these lessons forward not with regret, but with gratitude for the wisdom they had offered. Ariba's heart healed gradually, but the experience never left her entirely. It remained as a quiet reminder of the complexity of feelings, of the power of restraint, and of the resilience of the human spirit. She had been tested, and she had survived, emerging stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. She stepped into her new life with courage, understanding that the moments that challenge us are the very ones that define us. The memory of seeing Hamza differently, the gentle concern, the shared understanding. The fleeting connection remained with her, but it no longer held power over her choices. Instead, it became a testament to her ability to navigate life's emotional storms with grace and integrity. In the end, Ariba had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes loving correctly means letting go, stepping back and choosing what protects others over what satisfies the heart. The story of her fleeting attraction, the stormy evenings, and quiet glances would remain a chapter in her life, chapter that shaped her, strengthened her, and prepared her to embrace love, life, and happiness in the right ways. And so, with a deep breath and a quiet smile, Ariba began the next chapter of her life, carrying the wisdom of experience, the strength of self-control, and the quiet certainty that she had done the right thing.